Good morning, everyone. Welcome to West Valley. If you are viewing this from somewhere else in the world or nearby, I just want to thank you for joining us today. If you're new with us, thanks for joining us, and please use the connection card in the description below. We would love to communicate with you and let you know more about West Valley. I wanted to let you know some of the ways that we stay connected in these wacky, weird 2020 times. One of the ways that we are loving connecting with each other is on Tuesday nights at 7:15, we're doing a Zoom prayer time. If you've never joined us for that, please do it, because it is a way to really go deeper with each other. We're praying for each other's needs as well as the needs that we know in our community, in our city, in our country, and in our world. So please join us for that. It's just a brief time, but it is powerful. 7:15 on Thursday, it's Instagram Live. It's just fun. It's a way to stay connected and get to know maybe another person in our church. We get to interview them, we get to laugh, we have quarantine memes with Richard. It's really fun, so please join us for that. I want to let you know some cool things that are taking place. We're going to start meeting in person. We started last Sunday. We're going to be doing every other week. So during November, it's November 8th, and then 2 weeks after that, which I forget what the date is, and then the same in December. And I want you to pencil those in to plan on being there. We need you to RSVP, but we had a wonderful time, and I would venture to say that those of us who were able to be there, it was powerful because we got to see each other. We got to worship together. We got to interact with the message together and just catch up. And boy, is it really important to be able to be a community like that. So please join us for the next time, which is November 8th. I also want to let you know what's an event that's coming up in December. And I know it's a little ways off, but not that far. Those of you women out there who we've been doing this annual ornament exchange for Christmas, we're doing it again. So December 11th, it's a Friday. So just put that on your calendar, you'll get more information. We have a chance to worship together. And you know, one of the ways that we worship is through our giving. Worship isn't just listening to a message and interacting. It's not only singing, which are really important things, but it's also the way that we live, the way we choose to use the resources that God has given us. So I want to encourage you to continue your faithful giving and your faithful tithes to West Valley, because God is at work and He is using this, and we are seeing Him reach other people beyond our community through this video. So please continue your faithfulness. God is honored when we faithfully give. Other ways we worship is through just our lives, through the way we interact every day. And we're now getting a chance to worship right now with music and through listening to God's spoken word and hearing God's Spirit speak through these things. So I encourage you to listen, but also engage your heart to see what God has for you today. And I want to remind you, like I do every Sunday, is you are loved.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above you, heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Amen. 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 God, we praise you. God, we praise you. Yeah. has overcome. The grave is beaten, love has won. Praise God, our Savior, Christ the Son. Praise is rising, eyes are turning to you. We turn to you. Hope is stirring, hearts are yearning for you. We long for when we see you, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Washed away. Hosanna, Hosanna. You are the God who saves us. Worthy of all our praises, Hosanna, Hosanna. Come have your way among us. We welcome you here, Lord Jesus. Hear the sound of hearts turning to you. We turn to you. In your kingdom, broken lives are made new. You make us new. 'Cause when we see you, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Washed away. Hosanna, 'Cause when we see you, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. 'Cause when we see you, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away, washed away. Hosanna, Hosanna, you are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. Hosanna.
Good morning. It's great we can be together again. I'm looking forward to next week again when we're back actually in the building. And last week was fantastic in that regard. As Renee talked about in the announcements, it's really good that there's something about when we come together that is really refreshing for the soul. So it was great to be together last week. But this week, you're in your home, wherever you're listening to this, I'm glad you're here. I'm thankful that you're part of what we're doing through our study here through the book of James. And before we dive into it this morning, I'm just going to start with a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful that you have spoken to us. You have made yourself known. You are near us, and you want to be involved, directly impacting our lives. And so we are thankful for that. We are thankful for the instructions that you have given through your apostle James and in what he has recorded for us. These are your words for our lives. May we listen and respond. Give us ears to hear. Give us hearts that are desirous to be changed. And so we thank you for this opportunity as we step back into your word. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we're in the book of James. We're looking at this idea of back to abnormal, changing really our perspective on what we want to be normal for us. And so thus the title, Back to Abnormal. We're wanting to make it a little bit different. And James has been leading us through, been giving us some very challenging things, I think, and you've probably noticed that he's very black and white. He doesn't try to make it soft so that it's easy to receive. He tells it honestly so that it causes the listener to stop and evaluate. And that is the purpose in his style of writing. And so last week, Brian took us down the path of understanding, is where we're kind of going, where James is taking us now into the heart of his message. And Brian talked to us about the whole idea of faith needing to manifest itself in that emotional element of what grieves God grieves me, and that we have that close connection to God, so close to him that we are affected directly by what affects him, and that it's not an academic exercise, but a exercise of joy in orienting my life toward God. That's where Brian started us, and I'm kind of continuing that thought today that Brian took us through from James chapter 4. I'm going to get to James chapter 4 and to that passage that Brian led us through last week by the end of what we're talking about today. But to get at the heart of what I want us to understand, it's directly connected to what we looked at last week. I'm going to start us in James chapter 2. And I hope that you had a chance to take the challenge that Brian gave last week, in that you have spent time reading through James chapter 4, verse 4 through 10. Just that connection there of our lives being drawn close to God. And so we're going to pick up with that idea, but I'm going to go back to James chapter 2 because it's a theme that he started early in this letter, and he repeats it because it's the central woven theme to all that he's been teaching us to this point. The idea that our words and the way we treat people and how we handle adversity, all of those things come out of a relationship with God. But it's just not a mental consent to God and what he's done, but it is a life relationship with God that really informs everything that I do. So let's pick up with the question that he asked in James chapter 2, verse 14. And this is a little bit longer passage. I'm going to read through it. I'm going to break it down for you a little bit so we get at the heart of what he's saying. Then we're going to jump ahead and be taken a little bit deeper in chapter 4. So starting with verse 14. What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions? There's the question. Faith needs to determine actions. That's what James is trying to ask that question. What good is it to say you have faith if it doesn't determine your actions? And one of the things that we're going to see, when we go into this a little bit further, is when he speaks about faith, he's saying you can have a mental consent to God and to what he's done, but if it isn't producing anything, if it doesn't change who you are, then it really is of no value. So let's continue on. Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. You see, there was no action related to what you saw and what you understood. Your faith in God, there's like this blank space there that didn't cause you to do what God would lead you to do. He goes, what good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. And otherwise its deeds are useless. See, so faith isn't a belief system to justify one's behavior. It's a surrender to a new way of living expressed in everything that a person is to do. Everything I do, if I say that I am a person of faith and put my faith in Christ, it needs to inform, transform everything that I do. And when he uses that term good deeds, he's not talking about going and mowing your neighbor's lawn, though that can be an expression of your faith. It's not like, okay, I'm earning brownie points. I helped my grandma cross the street, so therefore that was an expression of my faith. It's not good deeds in themselves, but it is deeds informed by your belief in what Christ has done for us, his death, burial, and resurrection. Our very existence needs to become an expression of our faith, is what James is challenging us with. So let's take it further, because he wants to talk to us and give us a full understanding of what this means. Verse 18. Now some may say, some people have faith and others have deeds. But I say, how can you show me faith if you don't have good deeds? I'll show you my faith by my good deeds. You say you have faith for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. You see, faith without actions is only knowledge unapplied. And that's where James is challenging us, is that we have to understand, to say one has faith, it is nothing more than a knowledge base of saying, I know what Christ has done and what the Bible says and what God says he's done for me and what he desires for me. But until that produces a change in the way that I live, that faith is nothing. And he's trying to help us understand that this idea of faith and deeds really go together. They can't be separated. It's the same thing, that my faith is expressed fully through the full expression of my life. That's where James is taking us. In fact, how does he state it in the next verse? How foolish. Can't you see that faith without good deeds is useless? In other words, it's worthless. To say that you have faith in Jesus, but have it not inform, change, and transform everything that you do in your life. If it's not the first filter and the last filter for every word that comes out of your mouth, if it's not the way that you see the value in people. Remember, we've looked at this, our tongue, the way that we value other people, the way we even value ourselves, the way we handle difficulty. All of these things are being transformed by our faith, unless faith is just a knowledge and a consent to God. It has to change the way that we practically live out our faith every day. Our lives every day has to be an expression of our faith. You see, faith isn't a belief in God. He says the demons believe in God. It doesn't change their behavior. They tremble because they know the truth, but they aren't changing anything. You see, faith is a response to God. And now James gives us two strong cultural examples to help us understand what he means by faith in action. And I want you to understand, he's writing this to an audience who these examples would mean something specific. And so I'm going to try to help draw that out a little bit as we look at it. But I'm sure you're going to at least have some comprehension of who these people are. Verse 21. Do you not remember that our ancestor Abraham was shown to be right with God by his actions when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? A couple of things I want to draw to your attention right there. Abraham was said to be a man of faith, but his faith was said to be an actual, he was a man who had a belief in God. We know that. We can read his story. But his belief in God was not expressed as faith, true faith, until he was willing to take the actions that faith required of him. That's what James is getting at. And did you catch the phrase that he was made right with God by his actions? Extremely important truth here. To be made right with God is to be brought into close relationship with God. This is something that I want you to understand. If we had the time, I'd walk you all the way through the Bible and weave this thread for you so that you begin to see this fabric develop that is a beautiful picture. It's a mosaic. That life of faith is a life of action dependent upon God. He uses Abraham as an example, but we could walk through multiple, one person after another, that when their faith began to transform their behavior and their actions, it becomes a picture of the closeness and nearness of God in their lives. This idea of God being close is the critical concept of putting faith into action. And I'll explain that in just a minute in a little more detail. And James does that for us here as he's using these examples. And he's using specifically here of Abraham. That he is called, it says, you see his faith and his actions work together. His actions made his faith complete. Did you catch that phrase? His actions made his faith complete. In other words, went from knowledge of what God and what his promises were became a way of living when he acted upon that knowledge. God had made a promise of a son. And at first, Abraham and Sarah, they laughed about it. But then God intervened. In fact, Abraham tried to act upon it in multiple ways of his own control, but until he acted upon what he knew God had promised was when it changed his life. His faith became real when it affected his life. Same thing when he had his son and God says, I want you to sacrifice him. Now it was going from a belief in words and a promise to a way of living in light of that promise. Abraham had to put his faith into action. And again, I almost separate those words. His faith became action would be the better way of stating it. And that's what James is talking about here. He was brought close to God. He became a friend with God. I love that term right there. And in fact, that term, that idea of being a friend, he was called a friend of God. It's the idea of somebody whose life, who spends time with someone, is in proximity to someone, and so much so that it affects who they are. That's who Abraham was. He spent time with God, and it became not just a belief that God existed, but knew God existed and lived according to who he was. Verse 24, so you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. Okay, now he gives us another example. Verse 25, Rahab the prostitute is another example. She was shown to be right with God by her actions when she hid those messengers and sent them safely away by a different road. We're talking about what happened in the Old Testament, right? When the people of Israel came to the promised land. And under Joshua, under Moses sent in spies, and it was the people, mixing up two parts of the story. When Joshua sent in the spies, and they were there, Rahab responded because of what she had heard about God and how he was with his people, which is really important to go back and look at that. He was with his people and he went before his people. And she put faith in that God who had demonstrated himself, and her faith was expressed in action. So it goes on, just as sent them safely down away by a different road. Just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. You see, again, he is stating, and that's what a great expression. The body's dead without breath. Absolutely. If you're not breathing, you're dead. Your faith is dead if it doesn't cause and inform all of your actions, everything that you do. In other words, to say that you are a follower of Jesus means that you breathe the actions of his existence in your life. To say that you are a believer and a follower of Jesus means you breathe the actions of his existence in your life. That's what we are being challenged with. So from this, we understand that faith is not really faith until it produces a way of living for each one of us. He gave two examples there, both Abraham and Rahab, and I think, like I said, if we were part of the culture of the day when James wrote this, it might even hit us even harder, but I'm going to draw out a couple of things. He took two people that could be in the history and line of the nation of Israel and could be looked at as Abraham was known. He's the father of the nation of Israel. He is it. He is the man of faith. He's the one who in faith was used by God to launch a whole nation. And so people knew who he was. But it was his actions of faith that led to the nation being born and coming to existence. Rahab, one could look at and go, oh, she's kind of on the other extreme from Abraham, except unless you know the story of Rahab, how she was grafted into the nation of Israel and how God used her in the nation of Israel. And so they would know that lineage, and even it didn't matter who you were, she would have been seen as an unrighteous person. Abraham could have been claimed as a righteous person even before his faith was put into action. You see, you look at it, oh, Rahab, who's she? What good would she be to look at as an example? Because she put her faith in action. It didn't matter where she was on the socioeconomic scale of any sort, whether she was accepted or not, whether Abraham was seen as very acceptable and if she was least acceptable. They put their faith in action. And God used them for the nation of Israel. So those people receiving that story know that they owe everything to those people because they put their faith into action. That's part of they're part of the lineage that came from the line that included Abraham and included Rahab. And God was at work because they put their faith into a way of living. And so he was challenging them. And then the other thing he is wanting his readers to see is that both of them put their faith into action, but they also both were in circumstances where it would have been very, very easy and from a human perspective acceptable and in any way justifiable to not act in faith. Put yourself in Abraham's shoes. God tells him to take the son that he had been promised. When Sarah's what? Was she 100 years old, or he's 100 years old? They're very old and they're promised a son, and in that, God provides that promise. And so the faith needed to be put into action when the son God asked for the son to be sacrificed. Anybody go, oh, what a cruel thing. No, it was God giving Abraham the opportunity to live out his faith. God was giving Abraham the opportunity for his faith to become real. As I'll go back to James, for the existence of God to be breathed into everything that he did. God was breathing into Abraham and giving him a chance to take a breath of faith and breathe it out by being willing to sacrifice his son. Rahab, in a city, Jericho, surrounded by the nation of Israel, and every other nation and city has fallen before them, and she has heard about their God, and yet in her people despise the people of Israel. And when they knew that the people were there, it's like, well, we're going to take faith in our fortified city. But she put her faith in God, and she put her faith into action by receiving the spies and sending them safely out of the city. Man, oh, what's the big? That's an act of faith. She lived it out. God breathed into her and she breathed it out in her actions because of her faith in God. You see, difficult situations cannot determine the expression of my faith. My faith determines my response in the midst of my circumstances. God is active because God is close. Now, I'm going to take you to a foundational element here that I want you to get how this works. Because remember, we used that phrase earlier, it was used of Abraham, that he was a friend of God. And this idea that our faith has to express itself in action, but our actions come from those we draw close to. James chapter 4, verse 8, Brian read this for us last week, and it's extremely important when it talks, resist the devil, he'll flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. In other words, get rid of those things that keep you from drawing close to God. Do you know what it was called in the Old Testament when something would come between you and God? It was called idolatry. Anything that would cause me to focus away from God's presence with me. God made himself known to his people. God's presence dwelled with his people. And it was, in fact, God's intent to be with his people from the very beginning of creation. Go back to the book of Genesis, and when we're told what was God doing, he would walk with Adam and Eve in the cool of the evening in the garden. God created us to walk with us. God created us for us to know him, to experience the nearness of God. Do you remember when we were in Philippians chapter 4 in our previous series, it said, let your gentleness be evident to all, the Lord is near. This is a theme that runs from creation to the very day that we are in the presence of God, our future. It is the nearness of God. He wanted to walk with Adam and Eve, but we are included with them. They chose to be separated by God because in their circumstances, they didn't act upon what they knew to be true about God. They had not allowed him to fully inform their very decisions and their actions. And we were then have the interactions of that throughout the Old Testament of what that looks like and what that means. And so God continued to work and continue to express that his desire was to be with us, to draw near to us. That's why when we read in John chapter 1, verse 14, the word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. That word literally means to set up his tent, that God came to dwell with us. God is near. You see, God has drawn us close. Faith is not just to say that God is near and then to ignore him in everything else that we do. We are to be saying that God has come near, the word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, and we are to choose to set up our tents with him, to dwell in his presence, because he is now near. When Jesus was crucified on the cross, what happened in the temple? The curtain was torn asunder. Do you understand what that means? You may have heard that or go, oh, what's the deal? That curtain was what separated God from his presence from the people. And once a year, the priest could go into the Holy of Holies, but the people knew the presence of God dwelled among them there in the temple behind the curtain. God ripped that curtain apart because through Christ, God was released from the temple and went from a place to people. He came into our lives. He became available to us. God had done what he had always desired to do. He again now was able to walk with his people in their daily lives. God was close, and so the choice was, would we choose to be friends with God? Like Abraham, we have that choice, but it's a matter of faith. I must choose to move from knowledge to informed action because I've been spending time in the presence of God. He's informing and breathing into me everything I'm doing. He is the God who is present with me. He is here. I want to read you a headline. Maybe some of you caught it. This was out of the Babylon Bee in the Christian Living section. The headline was this: "Look at these dumb Israelites who keep going back to their idols," says man reading Bible before going off to worship his own idols. In Plattsville, Iowa, according to a source close to the local man, Christopher Benson, the Christian read his Bible this morning and scoffed at how dumb the Israelites were for continually returning to their idols before he went off to worship his modern-day idols throughout the day. "These Israelites sure were dumb for worshiping something other than God," scoffed the man who wastes hours of his life on social media every day, obsessed over his his favorite college football team, spends way too much money on material things in an attempt to keep himself content and satisfied. I'm like screaming at them the whole time I'm reading. Hey, dummies, don't you remember how God just saved you from Egypt? Come on, man. It's almost like there's some lesson in there for modern believers, but I haven't figured out what that is yet. I mean, it's just the Old Testament, so there's probably nothing applicable here. Benson pointed out that God intervened miraculously in the Israelite story time and time again, and yet they kept turning their backs on him. It's like if I were them, I'd definitely worship Yahweh alone and not turn to all those other false gods, he said, shaking his head, closing his Bible before going about the rest of his day as though there were no God. You see, we'll put the idea of idolatry, Old Testament word, we can kind of write it off, right? Anything that separates, comes between me and dwelling with a God who's come near is idolatry. That's why even in the Ten Commandments, what are they about? They're relational. Do you realize that? Those are relational statements that God says, here's how I can be close to you. And now he's saying you can be close to me because of what Christ has done on the cross. He has brought me into your life. I am close to you, but it needs to inform not just a faith that assents to what my son did on the cross. It's a faith that says, I know what he did, and now breathe through me the life of your presence with me. I want to be a friend with God. You see, you and I believe, struggle with idolatry as much as the nation of Israel did, but we just don't know it and label it as such. I've been reading, and I've mentioned a couple times to you, a book called Beautiful Resistance by John Tyson. He does a really good job here. I'm just going to read a couple more things to you. We'll be done. He talks about idols because he says in our culture today, we don't recognize those things that come between us and a God who is close, who is right here with us. And we let little things distract us, and therefore our faith stays only in knowledge. It does not become an informed life. And here's what he says. He talks about two things. First is heart idols. He says, if we approach God, his primary concern is the devotion of our hearts, not our performance out of duty. It's incredibly easy to have something take over our hearts to make its way into first place without our even knowing it. We keep up involvement in our small groups, attend church faithfully, give generously, love sacrificially, while holding something other than God as sacred in our hearts. That's why God always looks first at the heart rather than at religious habits. You see, heart idols are those things that we put before God in our values, affections, and minds. Is there anything you have set in your heart this way? He says, the heart idol is what is behind, can be hidden behind a successful exterior, but a heart idol will keep you from living your faith. He goes on and talks about cultural idols. In the Greco-Roman world, every region had local deities. These gods were at the center of their culture, defining things like fashion, identities, societal rhythms. Perhaps the idea of regional gods sounds primitive, yet in our own day, every place has a culture, a mix of values, traditions, rituals, and expectations that make it unique. Sometimes cultural idols are obvious, casting a shadow over the region. Sometimes they are more subtle. See, we humans have little cultural antennas, always shooting off signals to gauge whether we belong. How do I fit in? How do I live? What's valued here? We read, adjust, and conform. These external forces can exert tremendous pressure on how we act. In the same way that a Christian is discipled by the believing community into the image of Jesus, our world seeks to disciple and form us into the image, into its image. We may be blind to many of these cultural idols, but we look to our culture with eyes enlightened by the Spirit and the Word, and we can begin to see reality. We need a kingdom vision that transcends these categories of idols and offers an alternative vision. It is only when worshiping believers resist idolatry that they can truly be an alternative community of hope and anointed by God to bring renewal to the world at large. He's talking right there, that transformation from faith to actions, where faith is action. It's that combining. And he's challenging us. There are things that come between us. God is near. I want you to to consider with me again what we read in James 4:8. Come near to God and he will come near to you. That is when your faith, you become a friend of God and he informs everything you do, every action that you take. That's what James is driving home for us. Faith without actions is like a body without breath. Our faith is intertwined in the actions that we live because God is breathing himself through us because we spend life in proximity to him. He has come near. Jesus made that possible. Let's live out our faith. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this truth that you have come near, that you are a God who is near. May we really comprehend this and study it and challenge ourselves with it, that we become friends with you, so much so that you have informed and you determine how we live. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
To the cross I look, to the cross I cling, of its suffering I do drink, of its work I do sing. For on it my Savior, both bruised and crushed, show that God is love and God is just. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, holy surrender. What a priceless gift, undeserved life have I been given through Christ crucified. You call me out of death, you call me into life. I was under your wrath, and through the cross I'm reconciled. Cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I'm sweetly broken, holy surrender. At the cross you beckon me, draw me gently to my knees, and I am lost for words, so lost in love. I am sweetly broken, holy surrender. I'm broken for you. all this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Out of the dust, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new.
I want to end this morning. You may have noticed in my message, I didn't give you a specific challenge there. I want to give it to you now. and it is this. I'm going to do this with you. Do an honest evaluation by starting in prayer and asking God to reveal to you if there are any heart idols that you might have or any cultural idols that are distracting you and taking you away from the fact of spending your drawing close to Him. That's how I want to say it. He says that we can draw close. He has been working from the time we walked away from Him in the garden through Christ on the cross to set us into a relationship where He is close. God is near. We celebrated at Christmas, Emmanuel, God with us. It is when we begin to understand the impact of what God has done, and His whole purpose, when we read all the way through the Bible, is to be near us. He wants to be near us to transform us, to change us. That as we become friends of God, we breathe out in our actions His very existence in our lives. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Consider and pray about that. God, what idols stand between me and you? Whether it's cultural voices that are pulling my attention away and I listen to them first and I feel emotionally responsive to them first, and do you see how it's got to change? God is near. My emotions respond to His presence, and then I filter what I'm hearing in my culture through that relationship. Ask God to inform your relationship, that you become aware of His presence. I'm asking you this week, spend time in prayer, asking God to show you how to draw near to Him and what that looks like. Tell Him that you want to be a friend with Him. You are loved. Have a great week. Look forward to being with you next week. We'll see you again soon.